Welcome back to P1. Today we're looking at translating graphs. Now, if I want to translate something, it means I'm just going to move it. So move it in the horizontal direction, or move it in the vertical direction, or both. I'm not altering the graph in any other way. So when I'm looking at a graph, if I am adding a value, let's call it A, and if I'm adding it outside of that graph, it's going to affect the y direction, the vertical direction. And if I'm adding it inside my brackets of my f of x, it's going to affect the horizontal translation, or the horizontal direction. And what I see on the outside happens as I would expect it to happen. And if it happens on the inside for the horizontal, the x direction, it happens in the opposite of what I would expect. So here I'm going to do an example where I've sketched the graph y equals f of x, where f of x is this x minus 1 squared. And I'm going to apply these 4 transformations to it. So looking at the first one, we're drawing y equals f of x plus 3. So this is a vertical translation, so vertical movement of 3. So it's an increase of 3. So everything's going to move up by 3. So it's going to be sketched something like this, where now this point is still in line with the one on the x-axis. But instead of being at 0 on the y, this point would now be in line with 3. And the point where it crosses the y-axis would now be 4, as it's been increased by 3. And there's my sketch, and that's all I need to do. I just need to show the points where it crosses the axes, and it's useful also to show your turning points. Now for B, we're looking at y equals f of x minus 2. So I'm taking my original graph here and I'm moving it down 2. So in the vertical directions it's going to be moving down 2. So I want to think, right, well, it would normally cross the axis here at 1. If I move it down 2, it's going to cross the axis at negative 1. So that's where I need to make sure I get right for my sketch. And it's still going to turn when x equals 1. Okay, and it should have roughly the same shape. So it's still turning here at x equals 1. And instead of it being at 0, it's going to be minus 2. So that's the coordinates of that turning point there. Now, you can see that there are 2 points where it crosses the x-axis. I don't need to work these out for most of the types of questions that we do deal with, but I can do. So I'll just show you how to do that. So to do that, you would take your graph, y equals, now f of x is x minus 1 squared, and then we're going to take away 2. So expand my brackets, that gives me x minus 1 minus 2x plus 1 minus 2. So that then is x squared minus 2x minus 1. And then I would make this equal to 0 and I would solve. Now this isn't going to factorize, so I'd need to either use the formula, quadratic formula, or complete the square. I'll just pop the answers up now for you. Okay, so I can find these points. It's not too difficult in most cases. Some cases it might ask for it, and some cases it won't. So part C, now we're looking at y equals f of x plus 3. It's inside the brackets, so it affects the x direction, the horizontal direction, and we do the opposite. So plus 3 means I move 3 to the left. So if I'm moving 3 to the left, instead of being at 1, moving 3 to the left means I'm going to be at minus 2. And that's where my graph needs to be drawn. It's going to hit that minus 2, and then it's going to draw there. Okay, And that's pretty much it done. And again, now if I want to work out where it hits that y-axis, then I need to do a couple of calculations. So if I was doing those calculations, I've got y equals, now is f of x plus 3. So what I'm doing is I'm replacing x with x plus 3, and that's minus 1 squared. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the original, replacing this x with an x plus 3. This will then give me x plus 2 squared, which is what the graph is that we have drawn, and I can quite clearly see then that this value here is going to be 4. Okay, that's the constant from the 2 times 2, or if I expanded this bracket. And finally, part D, we've got x minus 3 inside my bracket. So as I said before, fix my x direction, my horizontal direction. I go in the opposite direction I expect, so instead of minus 3 going to the left, it means that minus 3 goes to the right. So that means instead of hitting at 1, I'm now going to hit at 4 on the x-axis. And again, it's just about getting the shape of your graph right. It doesn't have to be perfect. And again, as I said in the previous quick part, I can work out where it hits that axis just by substituting it in. So I'm replacing the x here with an x minus 3, and we still have that minus 1 squared, so we get x minus 4 squared, which is exactly what I'd expect, hitting this 4 here. And then I can see minus 4 squared is 16, so this is going to hit the y-axis at 16. And there's the first 4 straightforward sketches done for you. Now in this example we're looking at f of x equals 1 over x, and what I also know about this type of graph is that it contains 2 asymptotes. So I've got an asymptote here on the y-axis and an asymptote here on the x-axis. And when I'm translating my graphs, I also have to translate those asymptotes. So let's have a look at the first one. So part A, y equals f of x plus 1. So that is a vertical translation of positive 1, moving 1 unit up. Now as I said before, we also need to translate the asymptotes. Now the vertical asymptote, the one on the y-axis, won't change, but the one on the x-axis will. So if it's moving up 1, then what I need to do is draw a dashed or dotted line through the point y equals 1 here, or the line y equals 1 will be the name of it. Then I can go ahead now and do my sketch. So as it's a 1 over x type of graph, still going to keep that same shape, we just moved it up 1. The difference now is that it's heading towards the line y equals 1 instead of the x-axis, which is y equals 0. And as you can see, there is a point now on the x-axis that I can calculate. So as before, y equals now f of x is 1 over x plus 1. So all we're doing is substituting into here. F of x is 1 over x plus 1. And where it crosses the x-axis, that is when y equals 0. So then I can take my 1, take away 1 from both sides to give me 1 over x equals negative 1, multiply by x, so I get minus x equals 1, therefore x must equal minus 1. So this point is now negative 1, or the coordinates negative 1, 0. Okay, the point where it crosses the x-axis. Now part B, f of x plus 1 inside the brackets, so it's a horizontal movement, and we're going to move 1 square to the left. So 1 square to the left means that my vertical asymptote is also going to move 1 square, 1 unit to the left. So just like before, I want to do a vertical asymptote, and it's dashed lines, and 1 unit to the left means it's crossing my x-axis at -1. And I should also state what the equation of this line is, and it is x equals -1. And then I can draw my new graph, and it's going to look something like this. Remember, all we've done is move it 1 square or 1 unit to the left, so the shape is going to stay the same, and with no other units or values or scales on your axes, it's just about making sure the shape looks right. Now, as you can see, there is a point on the y-axis that I need to calculate, and to do this I need to substitute. So y equals, now it's a f of x plus 1, so I need to replace my x with x plus 1. Now, where it hits the y-axis, this is the point where x is 0, so y equals 1 over 0 plus 1. So this is just y equals 1, or the coordinate 0, 1. So this point here is 1. So you can see on my sketch it's probably a little bit high, but again, like I've said before, there's nothing to say that I haven't made my y scale different to my x scale. So there's nothing to stop me getting this question right, even though the distance between 0 and 1 on the y is different to 0 and 1 on the x. Now, part C, I've got both a horizontal and a vertical translation. So you can see from my graph that inside the brackets is affecting horizontally. -2 is going to be 2 units right, and the +1 outside is 1 unit up. So I'm going 2 units right, 1 unit up. This means that both of my asymptotes are going to change. So 1 unit up, and I want a nice dashed line there, and then 2 units right, and another dashed line there. So labeling these, we've got y equals 1 as it crosses my y-axis at 1, and then this one is x equals 2 as it crosses my x-axis at 2. After this, then it's a matter of sketching my graph. So this side is nice and easy, just looking something like that. Now with my other side, it's a little bit harder, so I can assume perhaps that it's going to look something like this, but I probably should check where it hits the x-axis and where it hits the y-axis to be sure. So let's have a look. We've got y equals, now it's f of x minus 2, so that's replacing the x with the x minus 2, and then we have a +1 separate. So I want to look at when x equals 0, and I also want to look at when y equals 0. We'll start with x equals 0 first. So when x equals 0, we have 1 over 0 minus 2 plus 1. So this is 1 over 2, it's going to be minus, plus 1, so it's going to be a half. So when x is 0, y equals a half. So that is looking pretty good here. Y is going to equal a half that point in there. And then looking at my second one, I'm going to do it over the side. So the same, y equals 1 over x minus 2 plus 1. And this time I'm going to substitute y equals 0 in. So we get 0 equals 1 over x minus 2 plus 1. So take minus 1 from both sides, so take 1 from both sides. And then I need to multiply by this x minus 2. So that's going to end up being 2 minus x equals 1. And then I can see that from this x equals 1, so the coordinates is 1, 0. So my other coordinate here will be 1. So this coordinate 1, 0. So my graph wasn't bad, a little bit off, but only slightly in terms of my sketch. In future, it's probably worth working out these two coordinates first before then you go ahead and do the sketch. Hopefully that hasn't been too bad for you and it's given you a lot of insight into this. If you've enjoyed the video so far and you've learned something and you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button now and hit the bell icon to let you know when I upload a new video. So let's give you a few to try, and as always I will go through the answers at the end of the video. So in this one, we know that the asymptotes are at y equals 1, which is across here, and x equals 2, which is something like this. So if I think of my original graph, my f of x is equal to a half, and I think of what's happening to f of x, it's increasing in the vertical direction by 1 unit. So that is f of x plus 1, and then I am moving it 2 units to the right, so that would be f of x minus 2 plus 1. So this is the graph that I have drawn. Now if I think that my original f of x is 1 over x, this would become 1 over x minus 2 plus 1. So here's my transformation that's happening, and here's the equation of the transformed graph. So to sketch this, I first need to factorize out an x, and then I need to factorize this quadratic part, so this is x plus 3 squared. So when y equals 0, I know that x is going to equal 0 and x is equal to negative 3 twice, so it's going to hit that and bounce off it. It's positive x cubed graph, so hitting the minus 3, and we have something like this. This is x cubed plus 6x squared plus 9x. Now for part B, we can see that a horizontal translation has taken place, as it's inside brackets x plus a, so this is an f of x plus a. And what we can see happens is that the coordinates minus 2, 0 lie on the point. So what I can think of happening is that this whole graph can shift 1 square or 1 unit to the right, and that would then cross at -2, 0, or it could shift to the left by 2 units, and that would mean that the graph would also cross at -2. So if I shifted it 1 unit to the right, this part of the graph would hit at -2, and if I moved it 2 units left, this part of the graph would hit at -2. You've got to imagine shifting this graph to the left and to the right, and that's where I'm going to get my 2 possible values. So if I move it 1 square to the right, that would happen when a equals -1. And if I move it 2 to the left, that would happen when a equals 2. So in this part, for part B, it's all about getting your values and the signs correct. Hopefully you did learn something today, and again, please hit that subscribe if you are enjoying these videos or you're finding them useful. And don't forget to tell your friends.